Alrighty, and we are live. Let's make sure that is actually the case on both YouTube and Rumble. Give me just a moment. And I'm going to kill the audio real fast. Yep, we are live on YouTube. How about Rumble? Let's go. Yes, we are live on Rumble. Excellent. Alrighty. Thank you everyone for joining me once again. I am Mikhail the Stray Cat, and today we are going to conclude our reading of Murray Rothbard's The Anatomy of the State with Part 7. History as a race between state power and social power. So without further ados and addendums, let's get into this. Just as the two basic and mutually exclusive interrelations between men are peaceful cooperation or coercive exploitation, production or predation, so the history of mankind, particularly its economic history, may be considered as a contest between these two principles. On the one hand, there is creative productivity, peaceful exchange and cooperation. On the other, coercive dictation and predation over those social relations. Albert J. Nock happily termed these contesting forces social power and state power. Bulletin point 41. On the concepts of state power and social power, see Nock, Our Enemy the State. Caldwell, I'm guessing Idaho, IDA. Caxton Printers Limited, 1946. Also see Nock, Memoirs of a Superfluous Man, New York, Harper's, 1943. And Frank Chodorov, The Rise and Fall of Society, New York, Devin Adair, 1959. End of bulletin point. Social power is man's power over nature. His cooperative transformation of nature's resources and insight into nature's laws for the benefit of all participating individuals. Social power is the power over nature, the living standards achieved by men in mutual exchange. State power, as we have seen, is the coercive and parasitic seizure of this production, a draining of the fruits of society for the benefit of non-productive, actually anti-productive, rulers. While social power is over nature, state power is power over man. Through history, man's productive and creative forces have, time and again, carved out new ways of transforming nature for man's benefit. These have been the times when social power has spurted ahead of state power, and when the degree of state encroachment over society has considerably lessened. But always, after a greater or smaller time lag, the state has moved into these new areas to cripple and confiscate social power once more. Bulletin point 42. Amidst the flux of expansion or contraction, the state always makes sure that it seizes and retains certain crucial command posts of the economy. And society. Excuse me, I had to turn the page to continue that bulletin point. Among these command posts are a monopoly of violence, monopoly of the ultimate judicial power, the channels of communication and transportation, post office, roads, rivers, air routes, irrigated water in oriental despotisms, and education to mold the opinions of its future citizens. In the modern economy, money is the critical command post. End of bulletin point. Again, please forgive me. If the 17th through the 19th centuries were, in many countries of the West, times of accelerating social power and a corollary increase in freedom, peace, and material welfare, the 20th century has been primarily an age in which state power has been catching up, with a consequent reversion to slavery, war, and destruction. Bulletin point 43. This parasitic process of catching up has been almost openly proclaimed by Karl Marx, who conceded that socialism must be established through seizure of capital previously accumulated under capitalism. End of bulletin point. In this century, the human race faces once again the virulent reign, of the state. Now armed with the fruits of man's creative powers, confiscated and perverted to its own aims. The last few centuries were times when men tried to place constitutional and other limits on the state, only to find that such limits, as with all other attempts, have failed. Of all the numerous forms that governments have taken over the centuries, of all the concepts and institutions that have been tried, none has succeeded in keeping the state in check. The problem of the state is evidently as far from solution as ever. Perhaps new paths of inquiry must be explored if the successful final solution of the state question is ever to be attained. Bulletin point 44. Certainly, one indispensable ingredient of such a solution must be the surrendering of the alliance of intellectual and state through the creation of centers of intellectual inquiry and education, which will be independent of state power. Christopher Dawson notes that the great intellectual movements of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment were achieved by working outside of and sometimes against the entrenched universities. These academies of the new ideas were established by independent patrons. See Christopher Dawson, The Crisis of Western Education, New York, Sheed and Ward, 1961. End of bulletin point, and that concludes Murray Rothbard's The Anatomy of the State. I'd like to take a moment to thank anyone and everyone who has been following, and anyone and everyone who deems worthy to watch these videos in the future and listens to what Murray Rothbard had to say. I'd also like to announce that later today, probably about, I'd say, noon or 12:30 maybe, I will be going live once again, and I will be getting into Lysander Spooner's No Treason, the Constitution of No Authority. With that in mind, I hope you will all join me once again. But until then, as always, live free or die trying.